Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Geoff Grant. I'm part of the product marketing team here at Aible, and I'm joined here by Abbas, who is part of the Aible Industry Advisor Board, focusing specifically on financial services and marketing. He brings years of experience in the field and is going to be using this time to really dig deep into what's happening today in the world of marketing and specifically draw upon his experiences in financial services and how companies can really do more with less and how AI is going to make marketing that much more effective. It's going to be a fantastic webinar. He brings a lot of really deep expertise that I'm looking forward to hearing. And after his talk, we're going to be going through a couple different use cases specifically focused on marketing to really show you the power of Aible and how you're really going to be able to deliver ROI. And with that being said, please, Abbas, take over and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Look, I'm excited to be part of the Able's Industry Advisory Board. And just a little bit of background on myself. I have over 15 years of experience in all aspects of what I refer to as the science of marketing, specifically in the financial services area. This includes things like customer data analytics, marketing analytics, advanced analytics, customer insights, and aspects of performance marketing like direct, digital, and MarTech. Most recently, I was with M&T, and then prior to that, I've also had experience at US Bank. So with that sort of quick overview of my background, why don't we dive in? The topic today that we have is really focusing around banking and financial services industry, especially under the current circumstances of the pandemic. So, I'm sure you'll all agree that it's not an exaggeration to say that the pandemic has really turned our lives upside down, both our personal lives and our work lives. We are all anxious, concerned about how to stay safe and how to get through the pandemic. If I were to use the Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a framework, most of us were really focusing on, prior to the pandemic, most of us were really focusing on relationships, improving ourselves, self-actualization, and those types of initiatives. But now we have to contend with things that many of us have taken for granted, such as safety, good health, and for many, concerns about earning a living or taking care of family. These are really foundational needs that we really haven't been top of mind for us prior to the pandemic. And, rightfully so, the consumers in the current mindset have very low tolerance for sales and marketing pitches, and therefore, many businesses have pulled back on their marketing spend. Practicing social distancing, we are also getting much more comfortable with communicating via phone, video, and using self-service options via digital. The financial and economic uncertainties are not only impacting our personal lives, but also our work lives. You can imagine, as marketers, we had really well thought out plans that we had developed towards the end of last year for 2020. Now, all of those plans have to be thrown out of the window because they are not relevant anymore. And what financial institutions and, having spoken to a lot of colleagues, what they've had to do is to really reprioritize and refocus on the current realities, really putting a sharper focus on employees and their safety as well as the customers and their needs. So while we are all grappling with the new realities and changing how we live and work, many of the prognosticators have suggested that the new normal is likely to be very different than how we used to live and work previously. While there may be differing opinions about what the new normal may look like, I think one thing is clear, that the pandemic is clearly shaping our behaviors. And I would like to point out three key trends, consumer trends, that are being impacted. First, consumers are shifting their behaviors away from in-branch, in-person interactions with their bankers and moving to, using video and digital self-service capabilities from the safety of their homes. And as they're doing that, they are looking for simple and easy ways to meet their needs. And they want the freedom to be able to do that on their own time. And, finally, as we are all spending more time at home, the definition of home is changing, right? It's no longer just a place for all of us for where we rest and relax. It's now a home office. It's a daycare center. It's a school. It's a senior care center. So it's really redefining what it means to be home. What it means, the definition of home, really. And you can imagine the homes are not really set up to meet the new needs. So this is likely creating a need among consumers to do home improvements, renovations to their home to make it much more conducive to the current needs and realities. Now, as the consumer behaviors are changing, so are the financial institutions' behaviors that are serving these consumers. As many of you would know that, during the first few months of the pandemic, the banks and FIs were focusing first on business continuity, employee safety, working remotely, contending to really change their branch business model, right? From in-person interaction to limiting the in-person interaction and, relying more on digital self-service and drive-through capabilities. And at the same time, they were also trying to figure out, the banks and financial institutions were also trying to figure out how they can best meet the immediate needs of the consumers, like dispersing PPP loans or taking in forbearance requests and working with customers to allay any concerns they might have. And most banks that I'm familiar with either were well on their journey for tech transformation or were somewhere along that tech transformation journey. But at the same time, they had to sort of reprioritize the transformation, accelerate certain elements of it, specifically the areas that focus on providing end-to-end servicing digitally, as well as being able to originate accounts digitally. And in the short term, this sort of change has really increased the demands on call centers. We've seen the call center volumes, many of the financial institutions go through the roof. And as a result, what many of the companies are doing is they're leveraging AI-based systems to direct call center traffic to digital self-service, as well as optimizing language and messaging, to facilitate digital containment. So the implication of all of this is that the consumer perceptions about their financial institutions are being shaped by how well the financial institutions have been able to react to the pandemic and how well have they been able to serve the customer's most immediate needs. How easy or difficult was it to get the PPP loan, to apply for it and get it, or how were the banks there to help address their key questions about financial services. And, and finally, and this is really important, were the banks acting with empathy? Were they acting with the consumer's financial interests in mind? I think this creates both an opportunity for some and a challenge for others. Those FIs that were not able to adequately meet the needs of their customers are likely to see a level of churn among their customer base at some point down in the future. And it creates an opportunities for FIs that were really customer-centered and were able to really make the changes and be able to meet their customers' immediate needs. Now let's focus our attention to some of the emerging opportunities. Currently we are seeing record low interest rates, 20-year low mortgage interest rates in the range of about 3%. This, combined with the realities that many of the consumers are facing as a fallout of the pandemic, around need for liquidity, need for cash, are and the fact that the pandemic is extending. It may be with us for the next 6 months, 12 months. Who knows how long we'll be in this situation? Hopefully less, but that's just the reality of today. And all of this is doing is pushing up the demand for refi. Many of my colleagues that I've spoken with, have seen 2x increases in refi volume. At the same time, home purchases are holding stable, perhaps slightly lower versus last year, or roughly at the same level as last year. The consumer spending is another key impact, right? We saw significant declines in consumer spending early in the year, and now we are seeing some signs of growth. This slide really shows some information from the Futurist Group. Futurist Group, if you haven't checked it out, you should. It's an interesting consulting firm, research organization that tracks and forecasts consumer spending as part of their Road to Recovery Index. And you can see here that the consumer spending overall across all categories was down by over 30% in April, and is slowly picking up to about being down by, or forecast for July was that it would be down by about 18%. But what's really interesting here is that if you look at the home improvement spending, that is only down 3%. And I think it makes complete sense with home being such a big focus for consumers, and they're spending more time at home, and home has become the Swiss Army knife. It's a place where consumers are making the changes and renovating homes, making it much more adept to the times and the uses that are currently needed for the home. And this is likely to continue to fuel the need for home equity, refinancing, and home improvement and renovation activities. Now, while the trends are changing, the financial institutions have to also change how they do marketing. So as we have seen, pandemic is sort of progressing in a highly unpredictable fashion, right? There are certain geographies that are that have been able to sort of control the impact of the pandemic, whereas other geographies have seen significant fallout from the flare-ups. Similarly, there are areas, product categories, as we just talked about, refinancing, home equity, that are seeing a significant opportunity currently, but products like checking or credit may see a rise in the near future. So what this means is that the financial institutions and marketers really have to be nimble and quick to be able to focus, redirect their efforts in marketing activities to benefit from the opportunities that are here and now, right? So I think being quick and ability to make that pivot is really important. I think another key point that's important to recognize is that during turbulent times, the past performance is less and less a predictor of the future success. But as marketers, most of our targeting models, product mixes, offers, and in fact, the entire marketing plan is based on what has worked in the past. So how do we use the data to make proven marketing decisions during these turbulent times? I don't know the answer, but I think that one approach could be to marry our rigorous human judgment and perception with strong artificial intelligence. So we shouldn't be just disregarding all the data, but rather trying to combine our judgment with the machine learning. So that could be an opportunity for us. So let's take a look at some of the big challenges that the marketers are facing today. And these are similar to what have been some of the seminal challenges that we've faced. I would say in the realm of marketing analytics, there are three and only three questions that are really important to answer. It's not only important in terms of the questions we must focus on, but I've really built teams around answering these three questions. So the first question is what, then so what, and then finally, the third and the most important question is now what. And this is really important. The third question is really important because it really focuses on how do you leverage insights to drive business results. If you can't act on the insights, regardless of how great the analysis is, it really becomes just a theoretical venture. So really focusing on these three challenges, they still remain very relevant in the current situation. Now let's dig deeper a little bit. The first challenge that I would say, especially in the what category that we feel as marketer that we face, is really what I call the efficacy versus the simplicity paradox, right? We as marketers know that we can significantly improve the efficacy of our marketing models, our targeting models, by developing more granular segment-specific or a sub-segment-specific models. But as you build more models, you get into the challenges of how do you integrate the results of the model? How do you deploy the models? The practical execution challenges grow exponentially. The complexity grows exponentially. And so, what most marketers end up doing is that they sort of settle for more generalized models, in the favor of being pragmatic. So that's one of the challenges that I feel that is important, challenge that the marketers are facing today. The second really focuses around how do we determine the optimal mix, especially when you're taking into consideration the benefits and costs of marketing. Most of our marketing models are designed to predict response or conversion. But we all know that all consumers are not made equal. All consumers are not equally profitable. So, to be more precise, what we end up doing is we take the outputs of the marketing models, we bring that into Excel or Tableau, then we combine it with some financial drivers of costs to determine what would be the expected return on marketing investment. Now, that process in most organizations can be very cumbersome and tedious. And what that does is it really creates a barrier. It impedes the number of simulations we can run, the number of permutations we can run. And again, the marketers end up settling for optimizing, looking at a few scenarios. Really, and we all know that the cornerstone of scenario planning is really focused on identifying those strategies or tactics that are robust across multiple scenarios and multiple diverse scenarios. So if you're only testing a few different scenarios, you're really not gaining the learning from the scenario analysis and evaluation. So that remains to be the second key issue. How do you translate and optimize your models, not only based on response and conversion, but to optimize the business outcome? Then finally, I would say, and the final issue is even more critical today than ever before, which is really how do we anticipate and change? What do we know about the future that's going to be different, and how do we incorporate that into our marketing decisions? The right answer, as I mentioned earlier here, is not to disregard the past, the data and the outcomes, but really and rely solely on human intuition, because we know that's not always useful. I think the best thing is to somehow find ways where we can integrate and incorporate human judgment with the analysis and the data that we have. So in a nutshell, let me summarize. We've talked about three things. One is, focusing on how we can predict likelihood to respond in conversion, be able to improve the efficacy of predictions without limiting the number of models, and still making the deployment more pragmatic, and then optimizing and focusing on really the business outcomes. So to demonstrate this, it'd be great if we can look at a product mix simulation. Geoff, can we do a demo that shows how we might optimize the marketing product mix? In this case, I can tee up the context here. In this example, we thought it'd be useful to look at optimizing across multiple products that we are looking to market for the next campaign. These may include things like checking accounts, credit cards, personal loan, home purchase, and refinance, and be able to optimize it based on what we are seeing in the current realities.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, thanks, Abbas. So let's first take a look at a bank that wants to figure out which prospects to target with a specific product offering in an upcoming campaign. As you know, Abbas, one of the most common things you would be doing in marketing is put attributes of a prospect and decide whether or not to target them with a given product offering. So for example, here with my home purchase offering, I've filled in some attributes of a particular prospect in the bank. They've been with the bank for 4 years. They've got a relatively good-sized balance, a high credit score, already have a product with the bank, and have an annual income of about 120K. It is telling me to target them with a product offering, but that really isn't solving the whole picture here. That isn't really the problem we're wanting to solve. We have constrained marketing resources. We can only target a certain number of prospects in a given campaign. In reality, I want to actually find out where I should spend my money and which prospects I should go to overall to make the most money. So if I expand this view here to show you Aible Business, this is what Aible Business is going to be talking about. And so here you can see that I'm offering checking accounts, credit cards, home purchasing, personal loans, and refinance. And what Aible is telling me is that if I go over to the overall summary view here, Aible is telling me that if I have 15.7 million that I could spend on my marketing campaigns, I'm going to generate about 57.6 million in revenue and about 41.9 million in profit over 3 years. But what's actually happening here is Aible is telling me that I should be allocating a little more than half of my marketing dollars towards checking, 17% to home purchases, and 14% to refinance. But why is it telling me that? It's telling me that because Abbas and I have gone in and we've given it certain assumptions about what I'm expecting to happen in my campaign in terms of click-through rate, conversion value, cost per impression across my product offerings. And these are assumptions that would be exactly like you would expect in an Excel spreadsheet, and some things that you're already doing with your teams today. And I can just go ahead and change them here. How does this look, Abbas, so far?
It looks really neat. Geoff, just one question as I look at this. Can you talk a little bit about how exactly the optimization is being done here?
What Aible is doing is actually training what we call a frontier of models, which is more than 50 models across best-in-class open source libraries for each one of these subgroups, like checking, credit card, etc. And the AI is using these cost and benefit drivers that we've filled out, and these can even come from your data set itself, to figure out how aggressively the AI should be targeting prospects for each one of our offerings. Now, if we don't have a minimum or a maximum marketing budget that we need to consider, the optimizers can actually tell us the optimal marketing spend that maximizes our expected profit and really ensures that we're not leaving any money on the table.
Thanks, Geoff. This looks great. Now, this is the pre-COVID scenario, right? This is what we were looking at. This is what we were planning to do before our lives were disrupted. Is there a way to factor in, the current realities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right. This is the kind of business as usual view. And typically, you would already have a model deployed, you'd already be going through with the strategy, and it'd be very difficult to both anticipate and react to change. And so what we've done here now, Abbas, is I've gone ahead and taken some of the points you addressed during your talk earlier. We know that refinancing has become significantly more popular, mainly due to record low mortgage rates. And so I'm expecting to see a significant increase in conversion and a slight decrease in conversion values to correspond with those mortgage rates. And I've done that here automatically without even having to wait for that data to catch up, right? You mentioned earlier marrying data and human intuition. This is one way where we're doing that directly within Aible. We also know that within checking specifically, people today are really thinking more about liquidity and an optionality for the future. And so we're expecting a little bit of a decrease in conversion rates from about 30 bips to 20 bips. My conversion value is going to drop accordingly. And what you can see now is overall what Aible has done is it's immediately gone in and reduced our marketing resources dedicated to checking specifically from 8.8 million to 5.3 million. And it's telling me to put significantly less relative effort into checking. Remember, it was about 56%, in the business as usual scenario earlier, and now it's down to a little bit more than 40%. It's also telling me that I should put a lot more relative focus on my new home purchasing and refinance products. Overall, my total optimal marketing budget has decreased by about 3 million, from 15.7 to 12.8 million, in response to COVID. But we can still expect revenues of 58 million and profit of 45 million over these 3 years. How do you think about these changes, Abbas? Have we kind of addressed what we need so far, or is there anything else that we need to consider?
Thanks, Geoff. I think this is better, but I still feel that 40% is a little too much around checking. I don't think checking product is currently top of mind for our consumers, especially during the pandemic, and they're really not looking to switch their banks. So is there a way? So I have sort of two questions. One is there a way to sort of take out checking from the product mix? And so that's one question. The other question is, I see that, Aible has optimized the spend with the changes we talked about from 16 million down to near $13 million. But I still think that in the current environment, we don't have the appetite to spend 15 million on the next campaign or 13 million on the next campaign. Is there a way that I could limit, the spend, the total marketing spend to about 5 million?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, good point. And obviously, marketing budgets are tight as is, and every dollar that you allocate needs to generate the most return. And so let's look at this scenario that you wanted to put together. So what I've done here within checking is we could set the conversion rate to 0% here, right? And what that's allowed us to do is to completely divest from checking and reallocate it accordingly. What I've also now done here is I've set that maximum budget threshold of 5 million so that Aible's going to, with less resourcing, remember we originally had around 13 million. With that 5 million, it's really focusing on optimizing your profit in this case. And the end result is that nearly 90% of your marketing dollars are going to go towards refinancing and home purchasing opportunities.
This is great. I thought when I asked the question, Geoff, you were going to say that, hey, we'll have to reschedule the rest of the webinar to next week so that you can go and make these changes.
Time is money of us. We want to make this iterative and collaborative as possible. So this is great.
Yeah, no, this is really great. It's interesting to see how quickly and on the fly you can make some of these changes. So all in all, the results look really good. I think, as we talked about, and as you mentioned, majority of the spend, over 80% of the spend is on refi, which is where we see the big opportunity in today's environment. I really like the product mix. It's much more relevant and consistent with what we are seeing today. And now, just one other thought. We've gone through making a few different changes in assumptions. We started with a much higher budget, and we reduced it and further reduced it based on optimization and changing product mix. Is there a way that you can, I've lost track of all the changes we made. Is there a way that you can compare where we started versus where we ended?
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. I come from a consulting background, and the amount of times that assumptions were being passed back and forth in different Excel sheets, it was always really difficult to get a clear understanding of who was making what assumptions, what were the differences between our strategies, and that really was a roadblock at the end of the day of deploying and taking action. And so what I can do here, Abbas, is if I go and select our original pre-COVID scenario here, and I want to go compare, what I can do, and I'll set this to cost right here for us. Remember that we started with about 15.7 million in marketing spend, which is represented by this orange bar here. And we went it all the way down to 5 million. But you can see that Aible's allowed us to really optimize at much more limited spend by reducing the spend in low performance products such as checking, where we reduced our budget entirely by 9 million. And it's increased the budget in refinance, which is one of, like you mentioned, our hot products right now that we really want to take advantage of given the consumer demand. And what it's also telling me is, based upon our two different strategies, our business as usual and our COVID strategy, I can understand what the main differences are here. So I can see, for example, the conversion values were going down, costs were going down, but also more importantly, we can see that different models were selected. So I can have a clear understanding of why one particular scenario was giving certain suggestions versus another. We can also look at profit. So profit, remember, we had started at around 42 million, and we got it down to about 32 million. But we're able to do this by reducing our budget by 2/3, which is pretty remarkable in this case. And so we can see here that, again, we're moving a lot of our resourcing out of checking and putting it into the areas that make the most sense given our limited resources today.
Thanks, Geoff. This looks really really great. I mean, I like the fact that even though we've reduced the budget significantly by 2/3, but we are optimizing still for the profits, and we are only reducing the profits by about 25%. So that's really great to be able to make those adjustments and identify the optimal point on the opportunity frontiers as you're using all of these models. So that's pretty cool. Now, all of this is great. I still am not clear on how does my team take some of these models. I mean, you have like 50 different models or maybe 40 models now, and operationalize the output from these models into our campaign systems, marketing automation systems. Is that, I mean, because to me, that's a big challenge, right? And it seems, how would we do that? Is that doable?
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's a significant pain point. And just click here, deploy strategy, to kind of show you where we're going here. But you had mentioned earlier that marketers really have to settle between fewer models that maybe aren't as optimal, but generally have a lot less complexity to deal with and lower costs around deployment. But in Aible's case, what it's actually doing is it's routing to the right model automatically and makes running hundreds of models cost effective by using Lambdas and function apps on Azure and AWS. But we also allow and enable our customers to directly integrate a single API endpoint into some systems of record, like you highlighted, such as Salesforce, Tableau, Marketo, etc. And that is really where these predictions will be put in directly, so that your team on the front lines can get those predictions and recommendations automatically in the systems that they're using every day.
That's neat. So it's pretty much what you're saying, that is that you have APIs where you can actually export the information and send it directly to our marketing automation, CRM systems, and campaign systems.
Exactly right.
That's pretty cool. The other question I have is that the models are based at the individual level, right? So you have every row represents a prospect in your data set, and even though we have changed some of the assumptions here at the high level, if I had a CLV model where I could predict the potential value of a prospect, and I had that information as part of the data set, would that be factored into the optimization?
Yeah, great point. Because even customers within the same product offering or the same marketing channel itself might have different values to you. And so you're exactly right. If we have a CLV column, for example, in the data set, we can point to that so that the model becomes maybe more aggressive or conservative when you're targeting a prospect if they provide potentially higher value to the bank. So you can definitely do that by just including those kind of columns that you have already in the data set.
That's interesting. Thanks, Geoff. Now, now that we have sort of changed our product mix and focused a lot more effort around refi promotion, can we optimize the media mix for refi? It'd be good to take a look at an example where, we are looking across the various channels that we use. Perhaps they might be direct mail, email, digital display, addressable, or retargeting, as well as digital search.
Mm-hmm. The way to think about this is that, another common responsibility of marketing teams is, now that we've decided that we want to really focus heavily on the refinance product, we want to identify which channel is best in terms of targeting a specific prospect based on their attributes. But again, we've got many different channels. I need to really figure out less around who to target and really where to optimize my media mix. And so if I expand this again, what we can see here is that I've got 4 different channels that my particular bank is targeting particular prospects for my refinance product. Digital display, digital search, direct mail, and email. And what Aible is telling me in this example is that if I had about $5.7 million to spend on marketing, I'm able to generate nearly $27 million in revenue and $21 million in profit. But again, more importantly, it's telling me I should focus more than half of my marketing dollars in direct mail, and 20% in digital search and 14% in digital display. And it's telling me this because I've gone ahead and I've filled out, in this case, what my loan values are going to be. What's the cost per lead? What's my loan interest rate? These are all drivers of my costs and benefits of targeting particular prospects. And again, exactly like the things you would typically expect to see in Tableau or Excel as your team is working through figuring out who to target in your upcoming campaigns. Now, again, this is the business as usual scenario, right? We've seen some significant disruptions with COVID. Refinance is becoming more popular. So I know that there's going to be some changes across the board. And you had also mentioned, Abbas, that mortgage interest rates have dropped across the board by about and really continues to decline, which is going to really hit the revenue I would expect when I close these particular prospects. I also know that my direct mail cost per lead have actually doubled in this case, and I'm expecting my conversion to drop from about 10% to 8% because I've just found that this channel is becoming less effective than what it used to be in a pre-COVID world. And what you'll see now is that Aible's actually significantly reduced my marketing spend from about 5.6 million to 2.7 million, so a cut of more than half. But I can still expect revenues of about 12 million and profit of 9 million. But what it's telling me is, remember, direct mail was more than half of my spend prior to COVID. It's now telling me that I only really need to allocate about 15% of my spend to direct mail and focus much more heavily, nearly 70% of my budget in my digital display and digital search channels. What do you think about this first pass, Abbas? Are we kind of getting closer here, or is there anything else we need to consider?
Geoff, yeah, this looks better, definitely. However, now this creates further challenges, right? So I'm happy that we reduced our direct mail spend. But the challenge with direct mail is that regardless of whether I'm sending out 15 million pieces or 100,000 pieces, the effort and upfront work that goes into setting up the direct mail campaign is pretty much the same. So with the mix being only 15%, I don't think it makes sense for my team to spend the same level of effort and generating less profitability. So is there a way to, totally shut down direct mail for the next campaign? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of one thought. The other question I have is that, looking at the spend, I appreciate that we've reduced the spend to 2.7 million, but I think we've been a little too aggressive there. Refi is such a big opportunity. We are already seeing BAU volumes spike up. Is there a way to increase the budget and set it at roughly around, let's say, in the 4 million range?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if I hear you correctly, we're wanting to divest entirely out of direct mail, right? And make sure that we take advantage of some potential future opportunities by making sure that we're spending at least enough to satisfy that. And what I've done here is I've zeroed out our expected direct mail spend, and what it's done is it's recommended about 2.3 million. But to your point, in this example, I really want to set a minimum of about 4 million. And what that's going to do now is it's going to reallocate the dollars now a little bit more heavily into my digital search and digital display channels. But what this is allowing me to do is I've increased my budget slightly. I'm still able to generate 12 million in revenue and 8 million in profit. And this allows you the kind of flexibility to make those kind of judgment calls. Because at the end of the day, you want to align the AI, the optimization to the business realities that your team knows on the ground. And if that requires setting a minimum budget, a maximum budget, if that requires changing some of these assumptions on the fly to get that kind of alignment before we deploy a strategy, all that can be done here automatically.
Great. Thanks, Geoff. That's a really good demo. It really illustrates the flexibility and the ability to take, sort of the human judgment and combine it with the analytics and the data rather than ignoring the data entirely. One of the challenges I think that I faced in during my tenure and career, especially in leveraging data and analytics, is really in the point of applying the insights to drive business impacts. That's where the biggest gap tends to be. And what this does is it allows us to bring in the business perspective, the business users, sort of the marketing managers and the business managers into the process where they can actually become part of the output, right? Become part of influence how we are targeting, and be able to do that in a way that we are using the best of what the human sensibilities have to offer, combine that with the power of the data. So that's very helpful. And just to summarize, I think there were three key challenges that we talked about, that I have faced as a marketer. First is really the prediction problem, right? Do I focus on efficacy? Do I focus on simplicity? Or how to avoid the complexity that exponentially grows as you increase the number of models. So I think you've touched on that. The second part is really how do we integrate across those models, not only to optimize response or conversion, but to focus on the actual business outcome, which is the revenue and profitability. So how we would do that. And then the final part was around how do we anticipate the future and how do we incorporate that into our marketing decisions. And I really like the sort of the ability or the capability to sort of create augmented intelligence, right? So the AI augmented by human judgment. So thanks again, Geoff.
Oh no, thank you, Abbas. This was fantastic. I really learned a lot. Really enjoyed getting to work with you on this, and I'm sure everyone who attended did. For those that have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat here. Our team will get back to you within 24 hours. And for those who want to learn more, please request a demo at able.com/demo, and you can share your use case, and we'll show you how Aible will be able to deliver a business impact. So really looking forward to hearing from you, and thank you again for joining us today for this webinar.